So moles and bonding, pop quiz 8. Which of these compounds would you expect to have the highest melting point? To have the highest melting point, it should have a greater attraction. Greater the attraction, higher the melting point. Like greater attraction between the ions. How the attraction between the ions depends on what factor? It depends on the charge of the ions. Charge of the ions, the product of the charge should be like they should have a greater charge on them to have a stronger attraction, and the size of the ions should be small as possible to have a greater attraction. So melting in the ionic compounds, the highest melting point is the one which will have a strong ionic bond, and the strength of ionic bond depends on the size should be small as possible, charge of the ion should be large as possible. They all are like +1 and -1, so the charge, we don't have to compare a charge as sodium is there. But when you check the size, sodium ion sodium ion will have two shells, because first shell it will have 2, the second shell it will have 8. The chlorine will have first shell 2 chloride ions, second shell 8, and the third shell also 8. When you check for sodium fluoride, like I'll draw the structure for each ion. This will be a chloride. And when we talk about potassium, potassium is 288. So it will have 3 shells. And for fluorine, it is fluoride ion. It will be 2 and 2,8. So it will have 2 shells only. Now we want to check which combination will give the like will have a, because the charge is same for all of them, like +1 is there or -1. So the second factor which affects the strength of ionic bond is the size. The size should be small as possible. So which combination will have the smallest size? When sodium combined with chlorine, when sodium combined with fluorine, when potassium combined with chlorine, or potassium combined with fluorine. So which combination will give us the smallest size? So when sodium combined with fluorine, because sodium also 2 electron shells, fluoride also 2 electron shells. So that will be the smallest size of the ions. Smallest size of the ions means they will have a stronger attraction between them. As a result, stronger ionic bond or greater amount of energy is needed to separate the ions. That's why it will have the highest melting point. Is it clear, the first question? In question 2, element X is in group 2 of the periodic table and element Y is in group 7. X and Y are not the symbol of the element. What is the formula? So if element belongs to group 2, so the valency should be +2 or 2 plus. An element belongs to group 7, the valency will be -1. So to write a formula, we just cross multiply. So this 1 is with X and 2 is with Y. So it will be XY2. So XY2, it matches with option C. Then part B, under what condition does compound XY conduct electricity? Because X is a group 2 element, so it is a metal, and Y is a group 7 element, so it will be a non-metal. When metal combined with a non-metal, it will form an ionic compound. Under what condition the ionic compounds can conduct electricity? In solid state, no. In solid state, no. In solids and in liquid state, no. Only in a liquid or a molten state or in aqueous it can. Because in solid state, ionic compounds cannot conduct electricity. Because the ions are tightly packed together, they can only vibrate about the fixed position, but it cannot move from one place to another. Question 3. A drop of aqueous solution of a green copper to chromate is placed in a center of a strip of a damp filter paper. The end of a filter paper are connected to a DC supply. What is observed? You have to learn the color of these ions. So copper to ion, what is the color of the copper to ion? The copper to ion is blue in color. That's the appearance of the copper ion. Copper ions are blue in color. That's why most of the salt solutions of a copper are blue in color. And if we have a chromate ion, chromate 6 ion is there. So what is the color of the chromate? Chromate is yellow in color. And this one is blue in color. What is observed after few minutes? What will happen? Copper is a positive ion. The positive ions are attracted towards the cathode, the negative terminal, and the positive negative ions are attracted towards anode, the positive terminal. So a green solution, no, it won't be a green solution. So A and B are totally wrong. When you check, see a yellow colored has moved to the positive. So yellow color is moved towards positive, and a blue color to the negative end. So that's why C is the right answer, because chromate ions are yellow in color and copper ions are blue in color. So when we carry out the electrolysis, we observe the movement of these respective ions towards their electrodes. You have to learn the color of these ions. Which of these isoelectronic ions, isoelectronic means like they have the same number of electrons. And we did that, if you remember, like they all have 10 electrons, fluoride also 10 electrons, sodium also 10 electrons. But the number of the protons are different. For 7 protons are there, 9 protons are there, 10 protons, 11 proton, and 13 proton. So to have a smaller ionic radii, it should have greater nuclear charge, a greater number of the protons. So 13 protons are pulling these 10 electrons. As a result, the size will be small as possible. And here, 7 protons are pulling the 10, so it will have a large size. That's why D is the right answer for this. Which properties of cation result in a greater polarization? The cation means the positive ion. As we discussed, for a greater polarization, size of the positive ion should be small, and the charge on the positive ion should be large. So size, small size and large charge will cause a greater polarization. So large radius, no. Large radius, no. Small size, small charge, no. Small size and large charge. So D will be the right answer. Which properties of anion result most polarized? For polarization of anions, like when we talk about the polarization, the polarization depends on size of positive ion, the charge on the positive ion, the size of negative ion, and the charge on the negative ion. To have greater polarization or a distortion, the size of a positive ion should be small as possible for a maximum polarization. The charge on the positive ion should be large, so it can cause greater. Size of the negative ion should be large for have a greater polarization, and the charge on the negative ion should be large as to get a greater polarization. Because in when it will have a greater charge is there, greater negative charge, so it means more electrons are there. They are attracted more towards the positive ion, so it causes a greater distortion. So for the negative ion, we want both of them to be high. So large radius and large charge will cause a greater distortion. Distortion or a polarization is as having a same meaning. So A should be the right answer for this. Is it clear? This pop quiz, which was related to bondings and moles and bonding.